bus smelled like cleaning chemicals and old sandwiches. David pressed his forehead against the window, watching the city grow bigger as they got closer. He'd been on this bus for 6 hours and his legs were stiff. Everything he owned was stuffed into one green duffel bag at his feet and a black garbage bag on the seat next to him. 15 years old, and he was starting over, again. The lady at the last foster home had tried to be nice about it. She'd made him breakfast that morning even though he was leaving. "It's not you," she'd said, scrambling eggs he couldn't taste. "We're just not equipped for teenagers. You understand, right?" He'd nodded because that's what you did. You nodded, you said thank you, you left. This was his 7th placement in 4 years. He'd stopped counting after that. The bus pulled into the station downtown and David grabbed his bags. The driver didn't look at him as he stepped off. Nobody ever really looked at him. He was just another kid passing through, trying not to cause problems. The shelter was supposed to be on Coleman Street. The social worker had given him an address scribbled on a yellow sticky note. He walked 12 blocks in the August heat, the garbage bag cutting into his palm. Sweat dripped down his back. People walked past him like he was invisible. Maybe he was. The building didn't look like much. Red brick, 3 stories, bars on some of the windows. A sign out front said New Horizons Youth Center. Someone had spray painted something on the side wall, but the city had painted over it with a different shade of brown that didn't quite match. David stood outside for 10 minutes before going in. This was it. This was the place where kids went when there was nowhere else to go. He'd heard stories about shelters, fights, theft, drugs. He tightened his grip on his bags. The inside was cooler, at least. There was a desk right by the door, and a woman with gray hair looked up when he walked in. She wore glasses on a chain and a sweater, even though it was summer. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm supposed to check in." David Chen, the social worker, called. She typed something into her computer, nodded. "Yes, we've been expecting you." "I'm Mrs. Patterson. I run the evening shift here. Let me get someone to show you around." She made a phone call, and a few minutes later a younger guy appeared. He looked maybe 19 or 20, with a clipboard and a name tag that said staff. "Hey, I'm Robert. I'll show you where everything is." "You hungry?" David shrugged. He was always hungry, but he'd learned not to expect much. Robert took him through the building. Cafeteria on the first floor. Common room with a TV and some beat-up couches. Bathrooms that smelled like bleach. The sleeping areas were on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Boys on 2, girls on 3. Beds were assigned and you got a small locker for your stuff. That was it. "Lights out at 10 on weekdays, 11 on weekends," Robert explained. "Breakfast is at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. You miss it, you miss it. We don't run a restaurant. There's rules posted in every room. Read them, follow them. Pretty simple." David's room had 6 beds. Only 3 were occupied right now. The guys in there barely looked up when he walked in. One kid was maybe 13, skinny, reading a comic book. Another looked older, maybe 17, listening to music with earbuds in. The third was asleep even though it was 4 in the afternoon. His bed was in the corner. The mattress was thin, covered with a blue plastic cover that crinkled when he sat down. There was a flat pillow and a scratchy blanket folded at the foot of the bed. He put his duffel bag in the locker. It didn't fit, so he had to leave the garbage bag under his bed. He sat there for a while, not sure what to do next. Dinner was in 2 hours. He didn't want to sit in the cafeteria alone, but he didn't want to stay in this room either. The kid with the earbuds was staring at him now, sizing him up. David looked away first. That's how it worked. Don't make eye contact. Don't cause problems. Don't trust anyone. He ended up in the common room. The TV was on, playing some talk show nobody was watching. A few kids sat around on the couches. They had the look David recognized. The look that said they'd been disappointed so many times that they'd stopped expecting anything good. There was a basketball hoop outside, visible through the big windows. Some guys were playing, but David didn't feel like joining. He'd never been good at basketball anyway. An older woman walked through, carrying a stack of folders. She smiled at everyone, said hello to each person by name. When she got to David, she stopped. "You must be new. I'm Miss Rodriguez. I'm the coordinator here. You settling in okay?" "Yeah," he lied. "Good. If you need anything, my office is down that hall. Door's always open during the day." She said it like she meant it, but David had heard that before too. He spent the rest of the afternoon sitting on that couch, watching the basketball game outside. The players were laughing, shoving each other, acting like they didn't have a care in the world. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they'd figured out how to stop caring. At 6 o'clock, people started moving toward the cafeteria. David followed. The food wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst he'd had either. Spaghetti, garlic bread, some kind of salad. He sat at the end of a table by himself, eating quickly. Someone sat down across from him. A kid maybe a year or two older, with a friendly face that made David immediately suspicious. "You're new, right? I'm Tyler." David nodded, didn't offer his name. "First day's always weird," Tyler continued, not bothered by the silence. "Gets better, though." "Well, sort of. Gets normal, at least." David kept eating. "You play cards?" Tyler asked. "No?" "Cool. You can just watch then." Tyler pulled out a deck from his pocket and started shuffling. David wanted to leave, to go back to his corner bed and his plastic mattress. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Tyler wasn't trying too hard, wasn't asking questions, wasn't making promises, so he stayed. He watched Tyler play solitaire, and when dinner ended, Tyler just said, "See you around," and walked away. That night, lying on his crackling mattress, David stared at the ceiling. The kid in the next bed was crying quietly, trying to muffle it with his pillow. David pretended not to hear. That was another rule. You didn't acknowledge weakness, not yours, not anyone else's. Tomorrow he'd have to figure out the schedule, school enrollment, job training, all the things they made you do to build a better future. He'd been through it before. He'd go through the motions because that's what you did. But lying there in the dark, listening to strangers breathe, David made himself a promise. He wouldn't get attached. He wouldn't hope. He'd stay long enough to figure out his next move, and then he'd leave. That's what he told himself. People always left eventually. Better to leave first. 3 weeks passed like they always did in places like this. Days blurred together, marked only by meal times and mandatory meetings with counselors who asked the same questions everyone always asked. How are you feeling? What are your goals? Have you thought about your future? David gave the answers they wanted to hear. I'm fine. I want to finish school. Yes, I've thought about it. They wrote things down in their folders and smiled like they'd accomplished something. But Tyler kept showing up, not in an annoying way. He didn't knock on David's door or follow him around. He'd just be there, in the common room after dinner, shuffling his cards. At breakfast, saving a seat even though David never asked him to. On the basketball court, passing the ball to David even when he missed the shot. It bothered David at first. He'd built walls for good reasons. But Tyler had this way of being present without demanding anything. He'd talk about random things. The terrible movie that was on last night. The new kid who snored like a freight train. His plan to become an electrician. My uncle does electrical work, Tyler said one evening, dealing cards on the common room table. Makes good money. You don't need a 4-year degree or anything, just an apprenticeship. I've been researching it. David picked up the cards Tyler dealt him even though he still didn't know how to play. He says once you get certified, you can work anywhere. Can't outsource electricity, you know. Tyler laughed at his own joke. Sounds like you've got it figured out, David said, trying not to sound bitter. Not really, but I'm trying. Tyler looked at his cards. That's all any of us can do, right? Through Tyler, David met others. There was Nicole, who was 17 and somehow still believed she'd go to college. She'd sit in the corner of the cafeteria every night, studying from library books. Math, mostly. She was scary good at it. It's just patterns, she'd explain when people asked. Once you see the pattern, it's easy. David started sitting near her sometimes. Not talking, just being in the same space. One night she looked up from her textbook. You need help with anything? Homework or whatever? I'm not in school right now, David admitted. Well, when you are. She went back to her equations. Then there was Chris, who could make anyone laugh. Even on the worst days when someone got bad news or lost their temper, or when the weight of everything felt too heavy, Chris would crack a joke. Stupid jokes, usually, dad jokes. But people smiled anyway. And Ms. Rodriguez, the coordinator, turned out to be exactly what she'd seemed like on David's first day. She remembered everyone's names, everyone's stories. When David's 16th birthday came up in the system, she didn't make a big deal of it. She just put a cupcake on his breakfast tray with a single candle. Happy birthday, she said quietly, lighting it with a lighter from her pocket. David stared at the flame. He couldn't remember the last time someone had acknowledged his birthday. He looked around, embarrassed, but most people weren't even paying attention. It was just a normal morning for them. Tyler slid into the seat next to him. "Make a wish, man." David blew out the candle. He didn't make a wish. Wishes were for kids who still believed in things. But that night they had another cupcake waiting in the common room. Nicole, Chris, Tyler, and a few others David had started to recognize. Nothing fancy. Just dollar store cupcakes and a card they'd all signed. David held the card, reading the messages. "Happy birthday. Hope this year is better." "You're all right, dude." Simple words, messy handwriting. His throat felt tight. "You good?" Tyler asked. David nodded, not trusting his voice. He was not good. He was confused. Because this felt like something, and he'd promised himself he wouldn't let things feel like anything. The weeks kept moving. David enrolled in the GED program because Ms. Rodriguez wouldn't stop mentioning it. The classes were easier than he expected. He'd always been decent at school when he actually went. Tyler dragged him to an information session about trade programs. David sat in the back, arms crossed, planning to leave early. But the instructor was different from the usual people who talked at them. He'd been in the system too. Grew up in shelters. Now he owned his own construction company. "Nobody's going to save you," the instructor said bluntly. "That's not me being mean. That's me being real. You want something different? You have to build it yourself." Literally, in my case, he smiled. "But here's what they don't tell you. You don't have to build it alone." David thought about that a lot over the next few days. One Friday night, the common room TV broke. Just died right in the middle of a basketball game everyone was watching. People groaned, argued about what to do. Chris suggested they play cards. Nicole rolled her eyes but pulled up a chair. Tyler taught them all poker. Not the complicated kind, just 5-card draw. They played for pretzels from the vending machine. David lost every hand at first, but he started to see the patterns Nicole talked about. When to fold, when to push. When someone was bluffing, they played until lights out. When Ms. Rodriguez came through to remind everyone of the time, she paused, watching them. She didn't say anything, just smiled and kept walking. David lay in bed that night listening to the familiar sounds of the shelter. The kid in the next bed wasn't crying anymore. He'd been there 2 months now, and David had learned his name was Kevin. He was 14, waiting for his mom to get out of rehab. "Hey," Kevin whispered in the dark. "You awake?" "Yeah. That thing you guys were doing tonight. The card game. Think I could play next time?" David surprised himself by answering, "Sure. Tyler teaches everyone. He's patient about it. Cool." They lay in silence for a while. "David?" Kevin's voice was smaller now, "Yeah? Do you think people can actually get out of here? Like, for real?" David thought about Tyler's plans. Nicole's textbooks. Chris's jokes that kept everyone's spirits up. Ms. Rodriguez's office door that really was always open. He thought about the instructor who'd built his own company. "I don't know," David said honestly, "but some people are trying pretty hard." "Yeah," Kevin said. "Yeah, I guess they are." The crack in David's wall got a little bigger that night. Not because of anything dramatic. Just because of cards and cupcakes and people who kept showing up. People who asked if you were okay and actually waited for the answer. Tyler got accepted into a pre-apprenticeship program a week later. He ran into the common room waving the letter and everyone cheered. Even David felt something close to happiness watching Tyler's face light up. But happiness brought fear. Because Tyler would leave eventually. The program was 6 months, and then he'd move into an apprenticeship, get his own place, start his real life. Everyone left. That was the rule David knew best. That night he almost packed his bags. Almost decided to disappear before Tyler could go first. Before this strange feeling of belonging could turn into another disappointment. But Tyler found him on the fire escape. Where David went when things felt too big. "You okay?" Tyler asked, sitting down without being invited. "Everyone leaves," David said. "Yeah," Tyler agreed. "They do." David waited for the empty reassurance, the lie that it would be different this time. Instead, Tyler said, "I'm leaving in 6 months. Moving into the apprentice housing. It's going to be weird not being here." David said nothing. "But here's the thing," Tyler continued, looking out at the parking lot below. "I'm not disappearing. I'll still have the same phone number. You'll still know where to find me." He paused. "If you want to." "Why would I want to?" David asked, hating how his voice cracked. "Because we're friends, you idiot. Friends. David turned the word over in his mind. He'd stopped using it years ago. Friends were temporary. Friends were people who left when things got hard. But Tyler was still sitting there, still showing up, still dealing cards and saving seats and talking about future plans like David might be in them. "Yeah," David finally said. "I guess we are." Tyler grinned. "Glad we cleared that up. Now get inside. It's cold and Ms. Rodriguez will have both our heads if she catches us out here after curfew." Walking back inside, David felt the strangest sensation. Like maybe, possibly, he didn't have to leave first this time. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday. David got back from his GED class around 4 in the afternoon. His test was in 2 weeks and he'd been studying more than he wanted to admit. Not because anyone was making him. Because he wanted to pass. Because failing felt worse now that people believed he could do it. He headed up to his room to grab his water bottle before dinner. The door was open. That should have been his first clue. His locker was open too. The lock was still there, but it had been forced. The metal was bent, scratched up. His duffel bag was on the floor, unzipped. Everything inside had been moved around, dumped out, put back wrong. David's heart started pounding. He dropped to his knees and dug through the bag, checking the inside pocket. The envelope was gone, $163. Every penny he'd earned from helping the maintenance guy clean gutters, organizing storage rooms, whatever odd jobs he could find. 3 months of work, gone. The rage came fast and familiar, like greeting an old friend. This was it. This was exactly what he'd been waiting for. Proof that trusting anyone was stupid. Proof that letting your guard down meant someone would hurt you. He should have known better. He did know better. David grabbed his bags and started shoving his clothes inside. Didn't matter where he'd go. He'd figure it out. He always did. Streets were better than this. At least on the streets you knew everyone was out for themselves. At least there were no false friendships, no pretending. "What are you doing?" Tyler stood in the doorway, basketball in hand. His hair was sweaty from playing outside. "Leaving," David said, not looking up. "Why?" "Someone stole my money." "All of it." Tyler's face changed. "From your locker?" "Yeah, while I was gone. Somebody knew I wasn't here." David shoved another shirt into his bag. "Probably one of your friends. One of the people I was stupid enough to trust. Hey, hold on. Let's report this. Ms. Rodriguez will check the cameras. They've got security footage in the hallways." "I don't care about the cameras," David snapped. "I care that I was dumb enough to think this place was different." "It is different." "No, it's not. People take from you. That's what they do. And I'm done pretending otherwise." Tyler put the basketball down. He came into the room and sat on Kevin's bed. Just sat there, not arguing, not trying to fix anything. "I get it," Tyler said finally. "Running makes sense. It's what I did my first year here." David stopped packing. "What?" "Yeah, I ran away 4 times. Made it all the way to Chicago once. Lasted 3 days before I came back." "You know why I came back?" Tyler looked at the floor. "Because living on the street was exactly what I expected. And I got tired of being right about how terrible people are." David's hands were shaking. "So what? You just decided to trust everyone? Act like everything's fine?" "No. I decided to let people surprise me sometimes. And yeah, some people suck. Someone stealing your money definitely sucks. But some people show up. Some people actually give a damn." Tyler met David's eyes. "I give a damn." "So does Nicole. So does Ms. Rodriguez. For how long?" David's voice cracked. "Until you leave? Until everyone moves on to their actual lives?" "Maybe," Tyler admitted. "I don't know the future. But right now, today, we're here. And we're going to help you get your money back." David wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. The proof. The inevitable disappointment he'd been bracing for since the day he arrived. But his hands stopped packing. Tyler stood up. "Come on, let's go talk to Ms. Rodriguez." Ms. Rodriguez listened without interrupting while David explained. She didn't give him the sympathetic face he hated. She pulled out a form and started writing. "We'll check the security footage from this afternoon," she said. "I'll also talk to everyone who was in the building. If someone forced that lock, they might have marks on their hands, scratches. We'll figure this out." "And if you don't?" David asked. "Then we'll figure out something else. But I'm not going to lie to you, David. This happens sometimes. We do our best to prevent it, but we're not perfect." She looked at him directly. "What I can tell you is that stealing is grounds for immediate removal from this shelter." Whoever did this is gone the second we confirm it. David nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Tyler and Nicole sat with him in the common room while they waited. Nobody said much. Chris came by, heard what happened, and just squeezed David's shoulder before leaving. Even that small gesture made David's throat tight. 2 hours later, Ms. Rodriguez called David to her office. "We found who did it," she said. "A resident named Brandon. He's 17, been here 3 weeks. The cameras show him going into your room with a screwdriver. We confronted him and he confessed. He's being transferred to a different facility tonight, and there will be legal consequences." "Did he say why?" Ms. Rodriguez hesitated. "He needed money for something. It doesn't excuse what he did, but his situation is complicated." "They always are," David said bitterly. "He had $80 on him. He already spent the rest. I'm going to work on getting you compensated for the full amount, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, I want you to have this." She pulled out $40 from her purse and put it on the desk. "I can't take your money," David said. "You can, and you will. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back when the shelter reimburses you." David stared at the money. Ms. Rodriguez was giving him cash from her own wallet, like it wasn't even a question. When he got back to the common room, Tyler was waiting. "They caught him?" Tyler asked. "Yeah." David explained what happened, showed him the $40. "Ms. Rodriguez is good people," Tyler said. "She gave me her own money." "I know. That's what I mean." They sat there for a while, watching the evening news on the TV nobody was really watching. "I almost left," David admitted quietly. "I know. I packed everything. I was going to walk out before morning. What stopped you?" David thought about it. About Tyler sitting on Kevin's bed, not pushing, just being there. About Nicole and Chris and Ms. Rodriguez treating his problem like it mattered. About people who showed up even when showing up was hard. "You did," David said. "All of you did." "Good," Tyler said. "Because you're not allowed to leave before my going away party. I'm expecting a speech." David almost smiled. "A speech?" "Yeah, something embarrassing about how I changed your life. Really make me cry in front of everyone. I hate speeches." "Tough. You're my friend. You have to embarrass me. It's the rule, friend." There was that word again. It didn't hurt as much this time. The next few days were weird. David kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for another disaster to prove he should have left when he had the chance. But nothing happened. People asked if he was okay. Nicole offered to help him study for his GED. Chris made jokes about installing booby traps on the lockers. Tyler's program start date was getting closer. 3 months now. He talked about it constantly. The classes he'd take, the tools he'd need, the apartment complex where the apprentices lived. "It's nothing fancy," Tyler said, showing David pictures on his phone. "Shared bathroom, tiny kitchen. But it's mine, you know. Well, mine and my roommates." David looked at the pictures. Plain walls. Basic furniture. To Tyler, it looked like freedom. "You excited?" David asked. "Terrified," Tyler admitted. "But yeah, excited too. You're going to be great at it." Tyler looked at him. "Thanks, man. That actually means a lot." The shelter had gotten a new TV for the common room. Chris claimed credit, saying his complaining had finally paid off. That Friday, a bunch of them gathered to watch a movie. Horror film. Terrible acting. Everyone yelled at the screen when characters made dumb decisions. David sat with his back against the couch eating microwave popcorn Tyler had burned. Nicole sat next to him, explaining why the monster's biology made no sense. Chris kept making predictions about who would die next. It was loud, chaotic, nothing special. But sitting there, surrounded by people who'd become more than just faces in a shelter, David realized something. The crack in his wall wasn't small anymore. These people had somehow broken through all his defenses without him noticing. And maybe that was okay. Maybe it was even good. Kevin joined them halfway through the movie, squeezing into the space between David and the couch. He'd started playing cards with them, started talking more. Still had hard days, but more good ones now. "This is the worst movie I've ever seen," Kevin whispered to David. "Yeah," David agreed. "It really is." They kept watching anyway. Later, lying in bed, David thought about the Tuesday that almost broke everything. The money was still gone, mostly. The person who took it was gone, too. But somehow David was still here, still trying, still showing up, still letting people surprise him. It didn't fix everything. There would be more bad days, more tests, more reasons to run. But for the first time in years, David thought maybe running wasn't the only option. David passed his GED on the first try. He didn't tell anyone when his test day came. Just woke up early, took the bus downtown, and walked into the testing center like it was no big deal. But his hands shook while filling out the paperwork. 4 hours of tests, math, reading, science, social studies. Everything he was supposed to have learned if his life had been normal. 2 weeks later, the results came in the mail. Ms. Rodriguez called him to her office and handed him the envelope. He opened it standing up, not trusting his legs to hold him if the news was bad. He'd passed. Not just barely, actually scored well. "I'm proud of you," Ms. Rodriguez said. David stared at the paper. Official certificate. His name printed right there. David Chen, high school equivalency, something nobody could take away. Tyler threw him a surprise party that night. Nothing big. Just pizza from the place down the street and a cake from the grocery store that said "Congrats, graduate" in blue icing. Nicole, Chris, Kevin, and a few others crowded into the common room. "Speech," Chris called out. "I don't do speeches," David said. "Just say something," Nicole encouraged. David looked around at these people who'd somehow become his people. "I never thought I'd finish school." "Any version of school?" He paused. "Thanks for making me think I could." Tyler raised his soda can. To David, and to everyone else who's going to do impossible things. They all drank to that. Things shifted after that. David started thinking about what came next. He couldn't stay at the shelter forever. The rules were clear. Once you turned 18 or got stable income and housing, you moved on. That was still 2 years away for him, but time moved faster than it seemed. Ms. Rodriguez helped him apply for a job at a grocery store. Stocking shelves, organizing inventory. Nothing glamorous, but it was legal work with a real paycheck. He got hired 2 weeks later. The first time David deposited money into the bank account Ms. Rodriguez helped him open, he stared at the receipt for a solid minute. His name, his account, his money that he'd earned. Tyler was deep into his apprenticeship now. He'd moved into the housing complex for trainees 2 months ago, but came back to visit every week. He'd show up on Sunday afternoons with stories about the electrical work he was learning. How to wire a circuit, how to read blueprints. The journeyman who supervised him was tough but fair. "It's hard," Tyler admitted one Sunday, sitting in the common room that felt different without him there full time. "Like really hard. I don't always know what I'm doing, but I'm learning." "You like it though?" David asked. "Yeah, I actually do." Tyler grinned. Who would have thought? Me with an actual career path. They'd started talking about the future differently, not in that vague someday way, but in concrete terms. Tyler would finish his apprenticeship in 2 years. Get certified. Start making decent money. "When you're done with school and your work program," Tyler said one day, casual like he was discussing the weather, "we should get a place together. Split rent. Would be cheaper than living alone." David's first instinct was to say no, to protect himself, to not count on anything. Instead, he said, "Yeah, that could work." Tyler looked surprised, then smiled. "Cool, it's a plan then, a plan." David had a plan that involved another person. That involved trust and future and hope. It should have terrified him. It kind of did, but it also felt right. Nicole got her scholarship. Full ride to community college for math and science. She'd applied without telling anyone, afraid to jinx it. When the acceptance came, she cried in Ms. Rodriguez's office for 20 minutes straight. They threw her a party too. That's what they did now. Celebrated the wins. Acknowledged the losses. Showed up for each other. Chris got a job at a restaurant downtown. Dishwasher at first, but the manager liked him. Said he had potential for line cook if he stuck with it. Chris talked about someday opening his own place. Soul food restaurant. Good portions. Fair prices. You'll all get free meals, Chris promised. Family discount, family. They used that word sometimes now. Not in a cheesy way, but in the way that mattered. The people who showed up, the people who stayed. David started helping with the younger kids at the shelter. Not officially. He'd just noticed when someone new arrived with that same look he'd had. Lost. Defensive. Scared. He'd sit with them at dinner. Show them where things were. Not push too hard. One kid, 13-year-old Raymond, reminded David of himself. Angry at everything. Trusted no one. Kept his belongings in his backpack even when sleeping. "You don't have to do that here," David told him one night. "Keep everything packed, I mean." "How do you know what I have to do?" Raymond shot back. I don't, David admitted. But I did the same thing when I got here. Took me weeks to unpack. Kept thinking I'd have to run. What changed? David thought about it. People kept showing up, even when I didn't want them to. Eventually, I got tired of being ready to leave. Raymond didn't respond, but the next day, David saw him unpack one shirt into his locker. Small steps. Winter came. The shelter always got more crowded in winter. People who'd been getting by on the streets needed somewhere warm. The common room was packed most nights. David didn't mind. He'd found his corner, his people. Tyler came by on a Tuesday evening earlier than usual. He had news. I got offered a job, he said, barely containing his excitement. Like a real job after I finish the apprenticeship. The company I'm working with wants to hire me full-time. Everyone cheered. Even people who didn't know Tyler well joined in. That's amazing, David said. It means I'll stay in the area, Tyler continued. Means that plan we talked about? About getting a place? We should actually do it. I'll be making enough to split rent, and once you finish your programs, between both our incomes we could afford something decent. David felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not doubt, something that felt like excitement. Let's do it, David said. They spent the next few weeks looking at apartments online. Nothing too expensive. Nothing in dangerous areas. Just something simple. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, a place to call home. Ms. Rodriguez helped them understand leases and deposits. Practical stuff nobody had ever taught them. She made spreadsheets, showed them how to budget, explained credit scores. You're building something real here, she said during one of their meetings. Both of you. I'm proud of how far you've come. David thought about the kid who'd stepped off the bus with everything in a garbage bag, who'd planned to stay a few weeks and then disappear. That kid wouldn't recognize who he was becoming. Kevin approached David one evening while he was studying in the common room. Can I ask you something? Kevin said. Sure. Do you think people like us can actually make it? Like really make it? David remembered asking Tyler almost the same question his first month there. He could give Kevin the safe answer. The one that didn't promise too much. Instead, he said, I think if we keep showing up for ourselves and for each other, we've got a shot. Better than if we try to do everything alone. Kevin nodded slowly. Tyler's leaving for real soon, right? In about 4 months. Aren't you scared? Yeah, David admitted. But he's not disappearing. He'll still be around. We've got plans. That's cool, Kevin said. That you guys have plans. After Kevin left, David sat there thinking. A year ago, he would have called plans delusional, would have said hope was for people who hadn't learned better yet. But here he was, making plans, believing in possibilities, trusting people. The scholarship for Tyler's final certification came through in February. The program would cover his last year of training completely. He called David immediately, voice breaking with emotion. I can't believe this is happening, Tyler said. Real career. Real future. You know? You earned it, David told him. We're doing this, man. We're actually doing this. They were. Against all odds, against everything that should have broken them, they were building lives that meant something. David lay in bed that night, listening to Raymond in the next bed. Not crying, just breathing steady, sleeping peacefully. Kevin was out for the weekend visiting his mom who'd gotten clean and was working on getting him back. Things still went wrong sometimes. People still left. The shelter still felt temporary and uncertain, but David wasn't alone anymore. Hadn't been for a while. He pulled out his phone and looked at the apartment listings he and Tyler had saved. 2 bedrooms, close to a bus line, affordable, real. He sent Tyler a message. This one looks good. Want to schedule a viewing? The reply came 30 seconds later. Yes. Let's do it. David smiled in the dark. The boy who'd arrived alone with nothing but walls around his heart was learning something revolutionary. You could let people in and survive it. You could build something with others and not have it all fall apart. You could choose your family, choose your future, choose hope. And sometimes, against everything, hope chose you back. 2 years after stepping off that Greyhound bus, David stood in the shelter lobby with his bags packed. But everything was different this time. The duffel bag was the same green one, but it wasn't held together with duct tape anymore. He had actual luggage now. A second bag he'd bought himself with money he'd earned and saved. Inside were clothes that fit, shoes without holes, things that belonged to him because he'd worked for them. The garbage bag was gone. Tyler pulled his truck into the parking lot. They'd gotten approved for the apartment 3 weeks ago. Signed the lease, paid the deposit. Today was moving day, you ready? Tyler called through the open window. David looked back at the building. 2 years of his life. The longest he'd stayed anywhere since he was 11. Yeah, David said. Just give me a minute. The common room had a banner stretched across the wall. Good luck, David, written in marker, decorated with drawings. Nicole's neat handwriting. Chris's messy scribbles. Kevin's careful letters. Raymond had drawn a surprisingly good basketball. They'd thrown him a going-away party last night. Ms. Rodriguez brought a cake from the fancy bakery downtown. Tyler came back for it. Nicole took a break from her college classes. Chris got off work early. Even some of the newer kids showed up, ones David had helped settle in. Speech time, Chris had announced. David had prepared for this. He'd written things down, practiced in his head. But standing there, looking at all these faces, the prepared words disappeared. When I got here, I wasn't planning to stay. He started. I thought I'd figure out my next move and leave before anyone could leave me first. That was my whole strategy. Leave first. He paused, swallowing hard. But you guys didn't let me. Tyler kept dealing cards even when I didn't want to play. Nicole offered to help with homework I didn't think I'd need. Chris made me laugh when I didn't want to. Ms. Rodriguez never gave up on believing I could do better. He looked at Kevin and Raymond, and then I got to watch new people come in scared and angry like I was. Got to maybe help them the way you all helped me. That meant something. His voice cracked. I came here alone. But I'm leaving with family. Real family. The kind you choose. The kind that chooses you back. He wiped his eyes, not caring who saw. So thank you. For not letting me stay alone. For making me believe I deserved more than just surviving. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Now standing in the lobby the next morning, Ms. Rodriguez came out of her office. She'd been the coordinator when he arrived and somehow still hadn't retired. Still remembered everyone's names. Still kept her door open. Got everything? She asked. I think so. She handed him an envelope. A little going-away present? Don't open it until you get to your new place. Ms. Rodriguez, you've already done so much. Humor me, she smiled. And David? I want you to remember something. You did this. Tyler helped, we all helped, but you're the one who chose to stay. Chose to try. That was all you. David hugged her. Really hugged her. Not the awkward side hug he used to do. She squeezed back tight. You call me if you need anything, she said. And you better visit. I will. I promise. Nicole was waiting by the door. She'd be graduating next year. Already had universities looking at her. You're going to do great, David told her. So are you, she replied. And hey, when Chris opens his restaurant and we're all successful, we should have a reunion. Deal. Chris came running from the kitchen where he'd been helping with breakfast prep. You're not leaving without saying goodbye, right? Never. They did their complicated handshake Chris had invented. Totally ridiculous. Meant everything. Kevin and Raymond walked out together. Kevin was doing better. His mom had an apartment now and he'd be moving back with her next month. It was scary, but good scary. Raymond still had a long way to go. Still angry, still defensive. But he'd unpacked more than just one shirt now. You've got my number, David told Raymond. You need anything, you call me. I'm serious, Raymond nodded, trying to look tough. Whatever. I'm fine, I know you are, but the offer stands. Kevin was less guarded. Thanks for everything, David, for real. You're going to be okay, David said. Both of you are. Tyler honked the horn. Come on, man. We've got keys to pick up. David grabbed his bags and walked to the truck. Threw them in the back. Climbed into the passenger seat. As they pulled out of the parking lot, David looked back one more time. The red brick building with bars on some windows. The sign that said New Horizons Youth Center. The basketball hoop where he'd learned to play. The fire escape where Tyler had found him that night he almost ran. You good? Tyler asked. Yeah, David said. I'm good. The apartment was in a neighborhood David didn't know. Nothing fancy. Their building was old, needed paint. But it was theirs. 3rd floor, end of the hall. Tyler unlocked the door with a dramatic flourish. Home sweet home. It was empty except for the basic furniture the previous tenants had left. A couch that had seen better days. A table with uneven legs. But the kitchen worked. The bathroom was clean. The 2 bedrooms were small but private. My room's the one on the left, Tyler said. Unless you want it. We can flip a coin. Left is good, David said. They spent the afternoon making the place livable. Tyler had been collecting things for weeks. Dishes from thrift stores, blankets his uncle had given him, a lamp, basic stuff that turned an empty apartment into something that felt like home. David unpacked his bags, hung up his clothes in the tiny closet, put his GED certificate in a frame Tyler had bought, set up his corner of their shared bathroom with his toothbrush and the good soap he liked. He remembered the envelope from Ms. Rodriguez and opened it. Inside was $100 and a note. David, this is not a loan. This is not charity. This is me investing in your future because I believe in it. Use it for whatever you need to get started. You've earned every opportunity coming your way. Proud of you always. Ms. Rodriguez. David sat on his bed, his actual bed, in his actual room, in an apartment he'd signed a lease for. He thought about the 15-year-old kid on that bus. How certain he'd been that he'd always be alone. That trust was weakness. That hope was delusion. That kid had been wrong about everything. Tyler knocked on his doorframe. Hey, we should probably get groceries before the stores close. Make a list? Yeah, let me grab paper. They sat at the uneven table and wrote down everything they needed. Milk, bread, eggs, coffee, pasta. The boring stuff that meant they were adults now. Really adults. Responsible for feeding themselves and paying bills and showing up to work. This is weird, right? Tyler said, looking at the list. Like we're really doing this. Very weird, David agreed. Good weird, though. Yeah, good weird. At the grocery store, they argued about which cereal to buy and whether name brand or generic was worth it. They filled the cart with more than they needed, got excited about having a full fridge, paid with their own money. Walking back to the apartment carrying bags, Tyler started laughing. What? David asked. 2 years ago, I was living in a room with 5 other people, wondering if I'd ever get out. And now I'm arguing with you about cereal brands in our own apartment. It's pretty unreal, David admitted. We did good, man. We really did good. That night they ordered pizza because neither of them felt like cooking, sat on the questionable couch eating from the box, watching a show on Tyler's laptop because they didn't have a TV yet. It was perfect. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Tyler left early for his electrical work. David went to his job at the grocery store and his night classes at community college. They'd meet back at the apartment in the evenings, compare how their days went, make dinner together. They weren't always good at it. They argued about dishes and whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, about the thermostat setting and the volume of Tyler's music, normal roommate stuff that somehow felt miraculous because it was theirs to argue about. Nicole came over one Saturday. She brought cookies she'd baked and helped them hang pictures on the walls. Chris stopped by after his restaurant shift with leftover food that was way too fancy for their apartment, but tasted incredible. Kevin called sometimes, updating David on his life. Things weren't perfect with his mom, but they were working on it. Raymond texted occasionally. Short messages. Still here. Got a B on my test. David always responded quickly, remembered what it felt like to reach out. Ms. Rodriguez visited once, unofficial inspection. She walked through the apartment, smiled at the mess in the sink and the laundry on the couch. It's very you two, she said. I love it. They made her coffee and sat around the uneven table telling stories. She updated them on the shelter, new kids, success stories, challenges. The world kept turning. People kept needing help. You ever think about volunteering? Ms. Rodriguez asked. Not now, but someday, coming back to talk to residents, show them what's possible. David considered it. A year ago he would have said no. Would have wanted to leave that part of his life behind completely. Yeah, he said now. I'd like that. Months passed. Tyler got promoted. David aced his classes. They started talking about getting a better couch, maybe a TV. Small upgrades that meant they were staying. Building something long-term. One evening, David was studying at the table when Tyler came home from work. He had that look. The one that meant something big, what? David asked. I got certified. Officially. Journeyman electrician. Took the test last week. Results came today. Tyler was grinning so hard his face must have hurt. I passed. David jumped up, grabbed Tyler in a hug. That's amazing. That's huge. Means a raise. Means I can take on my own projects. Means I really did it, you know. They went out to celebrate. Cheap diner because they weren't rich, but they got milkshakes and fries and felt like kings. To Tyler, David raised his glass. Journeyman electrician. Guy who wouldn't let me give up. And to us, Tyler corrected. To everyone who kept showing up. Later, walking home under streetlights, David thought about all the versions of himself he'd been. The scared kid on the bus, the defensive teenager packing his bags, the young man learning to trust. He thought about Tyler dealing cards, Nicole studying her math, Chris making people laugh, Ms. Rodriguez keeping her door open, Kevin taking small steps forward, Raymond unpacking one shirt at a time. He thought about family, not the one you're born into, the one you build, person by person, choice by choice, the one that catches you when you fall and celebrates when you fly. Tyler elbowed him. You're being weird and reflective. What's going on in that head? Just thinking, David said. About how wrong I was. About what? I used to think being alone kept me safe. That it was better to leave first than risk being left. But being alone was the most dangerous thing I ever did. Tyler nodded. Yeah, I get that. Coming to that shelter was supposed to be temporary. Just until I figured out my next move. I was going to leave as soon as I could. What changed? David smiled. You wouldn't let me. None of you would. You just kept showing up, kept making it harder to stay alone than to let people in. That's because you're annoying and we were stuck with you. Tyler joked. Shut up. David laughed, shoving him. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Hey, David, Tyler said as they reached their building. Yeah, thanks for not leaving. For staying. For being my brother. Brother. Family. Home. David had all three now. Thanks for not letting me, David replied. They climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment, the one with the uneven table and the questionable couch and the dishes in the sink, the one that was theirs. David unlocked the door and they went inside. The boy who came alone didn't leave that way. He left with family, with hope, with a future that wasn't just about surviving anymore. He left knowing that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay, is trust, is let people surprise you, and sometimes if you're really lucky, they surprise you by staying too. Home wasn't a place. It was people who chose you. People you chose back. David had finally found his.